So it's nice to have it all in one place and then have a series of testing questions to be able to test whether that's propelling you forward or backward. So number 2, what to look for when purchasing land. Does anybody have any ideas on what that might be?
Water.
Not swamp. You know, it's funny. I had a client a couple of years ago who contacted me and said, oh, I'm looking at buying this piece of land on Vancouver Island, and it's loaded with water, but I can't farm it. So I want to hire you to come out and drain the land for me. I was like, no, absolutely not. That's not my gig. Because if you have water on your land, water or aquatic ecosystems are 28 times more productive than terrestrial ones. So it's amazing how often you'll go to places like even Australia, and they'll be actually ditching their fields to drain them so that they can grow crops that are less productive than aquatic ones. Okay, so when you have water on your farm, you just need to be a little more productive than you were before. You need to think a little bit outside the box and understand how you're going to use that water to its advantage. But you're absolutely right. Water is an absolutely crucial thing to think about because if you think about ecosystems, the best analogy that I can give to an ecosystem is that sun is like the gas pedal. Okay, so if you live in the desert, it's like driving a dragster. If you can figure out water in a desert, you can do anything. Water, on the other hand, though, is the gasoline or the diesel. And so if you've got a system that's got lots of the pedal to the metal, but you don't have enough water, the engine stalls. So we're constantly trying to harvest water in a way that harmonizes with the available sun. Okay? Now, 9 times out of 10, water is going to be the limiting factor on any property. So generally, we look at, we have a little mantra that we use: water, access, and structures. So all properties should be, this is globally, it doesn't matter what ecosystem you find yourself in, should look at the water systems first. Those should dictate where access is placed. And finally, you place structures. Now, generally, the way Western culture, I'll say, because I can't really speak to the other ones, but Western culture typically will put in access, build structures, and then install sump pumps or drainage pipes or ditches. And what we're saying is, no, water is absolutely crucial to the resilience or anti-fragility of any piece of property. If you want to have long-term tenure on a piece of property, if you want to be having highly productive systems that put out net positive calories, which I would argue is one of the most crucial things that you need to be thinking about in terms of your food security. So how much energy is going into the system versus how much is coming out. So the industrial average right now is 10 calories of hydrocarbon in to 1 calorie out. We need to reverse that. We need 10 calories out for 1 calorie in. If you want that type of a system on your property, you have to harmonize your property with water. Does anybody know how they built the roads in Australia, the first ones? How they chose where to put them? Water. How specifically, though? They followed the sheep. Sheep don't like wet feet. So wherever the sheep went meant there was likely a good base for a road. Okay, so when we map out how water moves on a property, that instantly tells us where we should place access on that property. And where's the last place you want to put a house or a structure? In the water. So once you've figured out where the water is and where your access is going to go, there's only a couple places left to build. And those are going to be low energy places, okay? Because we're going to run them against other metrics like access to sun, shelter from wind. Are they in a disaster prone area? So is it likely to flood? Type 1 error if you put your house in a flood zone. Are there landslides likely around you? Do you have earthquakes, tornadoes, fire? I mean, these are things we thought about 100 years ago, but we've replaced those ideas with cheap energy. So now we don't have to think about fire because we have pumps that run on gasoline or electricity. I think that somehow I'm what's the word I'm looking for? Cursed somehow, because my mother-in-law owns 2 cabins, one of which has a basement built on a lake bottom with a sump pump and a septic field. And the power goes out there on a semi-regular basis. It's just rural Alberta, and they don't have the same kind of resiliency in the grid out there that we do in the city. And whenever that happens, the sump pump stops running, and in the springtime it needs to go every 5 minutes. And if the septic tank's full, because the groundwater table is high, because we didn't do water access structures, septic fields are structures, then the septic tank flows back into the basement as well. And so then we're fighting 2 water fires, kind of, like septic effluent, which is really nasty, and sump effluent, in order to try and deal with the lack of design, if you will. So we have to think about these things. And if you're going to be off-grid, just putting in a sump pump is going to add a huge amount of cost to your renewable energy system. Because now you have to have enough power to run your house, plus you have to have enough power for the worst possible water situation in the basement. Okay, so we need to think about these 3 things and how they're located on the property. This actually designs your whole piece of land, to be honest. And then we think about all of the energy sources coming in, so wildlife, wind, sun, even hail, if you live in Alberta, frost, and how to locate things relative to on your property to take advantage of things like microclimate. I mean, right now, this is kind of 2 interesting numbers that I always love to talk about, 1200 and 21. 1200 is the temperature that natural gas burns at. 21 is the temperature that we keep our homes at. You guys see a problem with that? It's like cutting butter with a chainsaw. So this little fact right here allows us to completely waste natural gas. Natural gas and oil should be used for making plastic, cars, pharmaceuticals, medical things that are enduring, that are lasting, that will actually provide service other than just one piston pump in our engine, or keeping a house warm at 21 degrees Celsius. And we can design much, much better structures, which is what I'm going to talk about next. That high energy density allows us to make really bad design. It's basically bred multiple generations of really lazy engineers and architects. Because if architects and engineers knew where south was, we could save 50% of the energy in our homes.